The most important thing is that the 9/11 myth is, of course, the premise and the root of the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war and the coming attack on Iran. I left Washington a couple of days ago. Washington is gripped by a war psychosis. Preparations are virtually complete for the nuclear attack on Iran based on absolutely nothing. We've got prestigious figures from the Clinton administration, Secretary Perry, calling for a preemptive attack on North Korea. And perhaps the scariest of all, the Lieber and Press article in Foreign Affairs in the March-April issue, talking about a first strike against the thermonuclear forces of Russia and or China. 3 paths leading to World War III, the incineration of this planet, all of them presided over by a group I can only call the neocon fascist madmen, the Strangeloves, the people who have got to be driven out of public life. Now, the basis of their power is the 9/11 myth. We are now in a race against time. Cheney and Bush have run up against a brick wall in the United Nations. They need an outside event. The Cheney Doctrine calls for the nuclear attack on Iran in the wake of a new fake 9/11 or new fake Gulf of Tonkin. That is now what is being prepared. The task of our movement, as I see it, is to educate the U.S. and world populations to the following point. If weapons of mass destruction go off anywhere in the world, please don't think Bin Laden, the cave, Afghanistan, Pashtunistan, or some other myth-drenched region. Please don't think it's Iran or Hezbollah. They're not that stupid. You've got to look to Cheney's office, Cheney's backers, Cheney's controllers, the neocon war party, and above all, the invisible government, the people with the technical ability to bring these things about. So I think this is our task, to educate the people to the point where the weapon of terrorism, which the oligarchy, the invisible government, proposed to use to organize this society, we must take that weapon and break it before their faces, deprive them of the ability to stampede and manipulate hundreds of millions of people using these cynically planned terrorist events of the synthetic terrorist type. And I think that's what our movement has to do. Thank you.
We have Professor Stephen E. Jones. Is Professor... Stephen Earl Jones is a professor of physics at Brigham Young University who conducts research into nuclear fusion and solar energy. Although the term cold fusion was coined by Jones in 1980, his experimental work was significantly different than more controversial cold fusion experiments by Pons and Fleischmann. Recently, Jones has also investigated, and he investigated that for the federal government, by the way, the hypothesis that the World Trade Center Twin Towers and WTC-7 all collapsed nearly symmetrically on September 11, 2001, were brought down by pre-positioned explosives. In 1973, Jones earned his bachelor's degree in physics with honors from Brigham Young University and his PhD in physics from Vanderbilt University in 1978. Jones conducted his PhD research at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center from 1974 to 1977 and postdoctoral research at Cornell University and Los Alamos Physics Facility. And he has written a scholarly paper that has, of course, been posted on the Brigham Young University website. And right now he is working with several other universities and other physicists and scientists, geologists, studying some of the samples they were able to get from the North and South Tower. And it shows conclusively thermite was used to cut the pillars. Not just thermite, the patented type used for demolition, thermate. Professor Jones, if you can please just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you woke up to 9/11, and then go through the incredible new discoveries and developments that you have been working on. Thank you.
Well, over the past several years, I received several nudges to investigate what really happened on 9/11. And I must admit, it took me a while to warm up to the idea, but finally I did. And the first time I saw Building 7 come down straight and fast, I realized this is very curious. I hadn't seen it until just about, it's been about a year and a half now ago. And as soon as I saw it, in a sense, I was hooked. I figured, as a scientist, I can't just ignore this data. I could see that building come straight down. I'd seen demolitions before, controlled demolitions. They look just like that. You know, a kink in the middle, and then that building just comes straight down, almost at free fall speed. Yeah, it's got these steel columns in the center and around the perimeter, and yet it just falls straight down. So, unfortunately, I got onto a good website, friend Jim Hoffman's site there, WTC7.net. And the nice thing that, and I have many friends now, you know, in this area. One nice thing that they did on that site is to provide references. And I like that because then I can check, you know. Now, I check for myself. So I go to this reference. It talks about sulfidation of steel. Gosh, that's curious. How did this sulfur get in this steel? You know, it's high temperature corrosion of the steel with sulfur. Man, that's really strange. I read that. I went to the source. I read it. And pretty quick, I'm learning about molten metal pools under both towers after they collapsed and Building 7. Now, Building 7 wasn't even hit by a jet, you know, and yet it comes down, and then it's got this molten metal underneath. And where'd that come from? I mean, you know, I hear people say, well, that would be from the metal of the planes. Well, that might work for the towers, possibly, but it sure doesn't work for Building 7. You know, it was 300 plus feet away from the North Tower, and no plane hit it. So where does this molten metal come from? So pretty quick then, as I studied this, I wrote up a paper, which many of you have seen. If you haven't, I hope you would. Just Google on Steve Jones, World Trade Center. It'll pull it right up. And I studied various aspects. And the molten metal is my first topic. It's the one that really caught my interest, and the data is just coming together. Now, I have a sample of this molten metal.